This is the easiest and most affordable way to get into the iPhone ecosystem. And at the same time, it's also one of the more controversial phones Apple has launched recently. And I'm talking about the iPhone 17e, which starts at $599 in the US. Now, about that controversy around this phone, that mostly comes down to two things. First, it's an Apple product, so there's always going to be a lot of noise around it. And second, it doesn't really bring a long list of upgrades over the previous model. And to be fair, that second point isn't entirely wrong. But I think that the bigger issue here is that this phone is meant for a very specific kind of user. And unless you understand who that person is, it's very easy to miss the point of the iPhone 17e completely. So in this video, that's exactly what I'm going to talk about in detail. Who is this phone actually for, and does it make sense as a daily driver? All right, my name is Sigi. You're watching Tech Gear Talk, and if you like this kind of content, you know what to do. Let's get into it. So let's talk about the design. And yeah, at first glance, there's nothing really new here. Apple is clearly going with the if it ain't broke, don't fix it approach. And honestly, I'm okay with that for this type of phone. That said, there is a new soft pink color this time, and I have to admit that I think it looks pretty nice in person. Unless there's a bright light falling onto it, then it kind of looks like white or a pinkish white. I don't know if is that a real color? Aside from that, it has that compact iPhone factor that a lot of people like, especially those who like the iPhone mini. And if you want something that's easy to use with one hand, or if you have smaller hands, this is a perfect choice. And even if you're using something like the Pro Max and you want something smaller as a secondary phone that you only use for calls or iMessages, this fits really nicely. It's also a bit lighter and just easier to hold when you compare it to something like the Google Pixel 10a. So overall, a very comfortable phone in the hand. Now, build quality is exactly what you'd expect. The frames are made of aluminum, and then there is glass on the front and the back. So it looks and feels premium in that typical Apple fashion. The button layouts are the same as before. There's an action button on the left, accompanied by the volume rockers, and on the right side, there's the exclusive power button. But there is one change this time, and it's actually a big one for me, and that's MagSafe. And I'm really glad that they added it, because if you're someone who already has MagSafe accessories, you could just use them right away. And if you don't, it does open up a lot of useful stuff like wallets, power banks, mounts. It just makes the whole experience a bit more flexible. And this, in my opinion, is a very nice and much needed upgrade from the 16e. Now, finally, it's also IP69 rated for protection against dust and water, which is always a plus. Now, even with this added protection, I always get a couple of accessories for all of my iPhones. And this time I went with some premium choices from Bellroy. First of all, I got this beautiful leather iPhone case that doubles as a minimalist wallet. I love this rust color. It can fit up to 3 cards in the back pocket, which has a magnetic door that also doubles as a stand. And I still have full access to my camera control button. I also wanted something for my AirPods Pro because the AirPods case is super slippery. So I'm using the Pod Jacket. It fits really nicely. I love the look and feel of the leather, and it comes with an optional lanyard if that's something that you want to add. And I don't know about you, but whenever I'm traveling, I like to keep my phone, accessories, and valuables close to my chest, so I wear a sling. And this is the Venture Ready sling in the color Fog, which is a really nice light gray. It has a padded phone sleeve, a couple of compartments, including a discreet rear zip pocket. I love that it's water resistant and that I can keep everything secure and easily accessible when I'm on the go. So if you're looking to upgrade your iPhone accessory game to the next level, check out the link in the description, and thank you to Bellroy for sponsoring this portion of the video. Now let's talk a little bit about the display, and this is where things get a bit mixed. So it's still a 60 Hertz panel, and you can clearly see the difference if you put it next to something like the iPhone 17 Pro or Pro Max. That 120 Hertz display just feels smoother and more fluid in day-to-day use, and once you're used to that, this does feel like a step behind. There's also no always-on display feature on the 17e. But that aside, this is still a really good display. It's a Super Retina XDR 6.1-inch OLED display, edge to edge, and quality is exactly what you'd expect from Apple. Colors look great, text is sharp, HDR content pops nicely, so whether you're watching something or just endlessly scrolling, it's a very good viewing experience. Now, I watched a ton of movies and shows on Netflix on this guy, and it never left me wanting more. I mean, this is an excellent display for a phone this size. Apple's trusty Face ID still works, and it's as reliable as always, but it does sit inside the age-old notch. And personally, I do think this was a perfect time to move to Dynamic Island. Would have made this phone feel a bit more current, but I guess that's something we're gonna have to wait for on the 18E maybe, who knows. Apple has also improved durability here. So you get newer Ceramic Shield 2 on the front, which is supposed to be more scratch resistant and a little bit better at handling reflection. And the latter actually works quite well when there's harsh light sources falling directly on the screen. Now for audio, you do get a stereo speaker setup on the 17E, which is actually pretty good. So whether you're watching movies or just listening to some music, the sound comes through clearly, it gets plenty loud, and there's a surprising amount of depth to it as well. You even get relatively decent bass for a phone this size, so no real complaints there. Now the iPhone 17e runs the Apple A19 chip, which is the same chipset as the iPhone 17, but the only difference here is that the 17e uses a binned 4-core GPU. And realistically, it's only going to affect graphics-intensive games a little bit, and that's not something that's gonna matter for the type of user who's gonna buy this phone. And still, to be fair, if you're looking at other phones at this price range, the 17e still feels noticeably faster in day-to-day use. Apps open quicker, everything feels more responsive, and even in benchmarks, it comfortably pulls ahead. Now, compared to the 16e, which was running on the A18, this is obviously a step up. So again, performance is definitely not something that you need to worry about with this phone. Another upgrade over the 16e here, which is probably a bigger reason for people who don't need Pro and Pro Max, and that's a higher base storage on the 17e. So the starting variant now comes with 256 gigs, which is double the storage of last year's, and that's without increasing the price. It's a great move because 120 gigabytes is fairly easy to fill up with photos, videos, and all your usual apps, but 256 gigs just gives you that extra bit of breathing room. Now, another thing worth mentioning here is the new C1X cellular modem. So this is Apple's second generation in-house modem, and it's a noticeable improvement. Now, in my use, connectivity felt solid, call quality was clear, and data speeds were consistent whether I was on the move or indoors. I think that Apple said that it's up to twice as fast as the previous version, and while I don't really sit around and measure that kind of thing, the overall experience does feel stable and reliable, which is what actually matters. Now, what really makes the iPhone 17e work well is its software. It runs the same version as the more expensive models, so you get iOS 26 right out of the box. And there's a lot to talk about when it comes to what iOS 26 brings to the table. I actually put together a dedicated in-depth video covering 50 things that you could do with iOS 26, so I'd highly recommend that you check it out. On the 17e, iOS 26 runs flawlessly. I didn't have any issues at all. Animations are smooth, apps open quickly, and everything just flows the way you'd expect it to. The battery capacity on the 17e hasn't really changed, and it's also how Apple has managed to keep this form factor. But in terms of actual usage, it's pretty solid. In my use, it easily lasted through an entire workday. This includes some camera usage, watching content on Netflix, doom scrolling on Instagram, and a little bit of web browsing. So basically what most people would do on a daily basis. So if you're someone who just wants a reliable iPhone that can comfortably get you through a typical workday with moderate usage, this does the job without any issues. Now, on the camera side, the 17e still sticks to a single camera setup, but it has improved, especially when it comes to portrait shoots. At its core, the hardware is still the same. You get a 48 megapixel fusion camera, which can also give you a 2x zoom at optical light quality through cropping. Now, if you compare it to something like the iPhone 17, there are a couple of differences. So you don't get an ultra-wide camera here, and the main sensor is also slightly smaller, so it does take in less light, which can make things a bit more challenging in low light situations. But despite that, Apple still manages to keep the overall image quality, dynamic range, and colors very close to what you'd get on the iPhone 17. And the target audience for this phone isn't really going to miss having an ultra-wide camera. What I would have liked to see is a telephoto lens, but even the regular iPhone 17 doesn't have that, so I think it might be asking a little bit too much at this price point. I used the 17e through a regular day. I took it to a coffee shop, I went out on a walk with my dog. Photos and videos both came out really well, and for most people, it's going to be more than enough. Now, when it comes to portraits, this is where I noticed a clear improvement. So edge detection is very clean, and the processing is quick. It's almost instant in most cases. As long as you have decent lighting, the shutter is fast, and the level of detail you get once the subject is locked is pretty impressive. On the front, we get a 12 megapixel camera. In good lighting, it does a solid job. Photos are sharp, colors look good, and it can easily fit a group of people in the frame. But overall, there's no upgrade here compared to the 16e. It's pretty much the same experience. So at the end of the day, the iPhone 17e is a very easy phone to understand once you know who it's meant for. If you're coming from an older iPhone, something like the 11 or 12, or even if you're switching over from Android and you want a reliable, no-nonsense iPhone experience, this makes a lot of sense. You're getting strong performance, a great display, solid cameras, and a battery life that you don't really have to think about. It's also a great pick if you prefer a compact phone or just want something simple that works well without needing all the extra pro features. And this is probably a good time to mention that the E series of iPhones is great for kids who need their first phone because it does pretty much everything that they would need. But at the same time, this is not for everyone. If you care about high refresh rate displays, you want more camera versatility like an ultra wide or a telephoto, you just want the latest features with things like dynamic island or the camera control button, then this is probably going to feel a bit outdated. And if you're already using something like the 16e, there's really not a strong reason to upgrade here. So yeah, the 17e is not trying to impress everyone. It's just trying to be a dependable, well-rounded iPhone for the specific kind of user. And for that audience, it actually does the job pretty well. You know what I always say? Buy it nice or buy it twice. Good luck and see you soon.